Hello and welcome back. This is another AP World History video lecture. This one is on the Industrial Revolution. So in the 1700s, the world was about to change due to a really significant revolution. It wasn't the American Revolution, nor the French Revolution, nor what would be the Russian Revolution. It was the Industrial Revolution. This economic revolution is going to change everything. Economics, culture, government, and beliefs over a period of 200 years. And all this happened without any real intentional violent wars or battles. What happened to make this possible? Well, to be quite honest, coal. What do I mean? Well, up until the 1700s, coal was just simply a messy and ugly rock that took up room on people's property. But during the late 1700s, people in Britain figured out how to take coal and heat it and create energy. Basically, the idea was this. You would take coal, use its heat to boil water, create steam, and then direct that steam into a contained area to create pressure. That pressure created energy or movement. Why does that matter? Well, think about what you can get to move thanks to this. Steamboats, railroads, machines. These are all the basics to making a revolution happen in industry. And industry changed everything. The Industrial Revolution attracted more and more people into urban centers, or a process called urbanization. This led to the development of a new labor force. That encouraged factories to be built to house new supply of laborers, and these new workers used their labor to produce stuff. A lot of stuff. In fact, that was the goal. The more stuff you produced, or what we call mass production, the more you could lower prices. This meant that people's living standards could improve over time. Also, it meant that there were more consumer goods or products created. And this meant that more wealth was spread out. This created a new middle class, and that middle class could then challenge the government and demand more political power and representation. In fact, the middle class eventually would change the government and have it run on a principle called laissez-faire. What laissez-faire meant was the government should keep its hands off of things and let people have the freedom to do their own actions. Finally, that middle class is going to challenge religious beliefs about humility, vanity, and deference to the upper class. In other words, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Okay, so let's start where the Industrial Revolution actually got started, on farms. Wait, what? Yeah, I know. The first place for the Industrial Revolution was not in factories, but in rural areas. Farmers realized that the best way to mass-produce crops was to find new ways to utilize all of the resources that were available. In England, in the past, peasants or serfs used to squat on the land. This meant that they would settle on the landowner's land and clean it, meaning that serfs would collect grain to eat. This allowed the landowners to then farm on the land. However, in the 1700s, landowners decided to use every part of the land for farming. So they kicked serfs off the land in what was called the enclosure movement. Then landowners used new crop rotation methods to farm every part of the land, mass-produce crops. Okay, here's where the Industrial Revolution connects everything. Those serfs who no longer could find a place on the landowner's land, well, they went into cities, urbanization. And it just happened that cities were being developed due to the need for factories and factory labor. Now you have a major demographic movement supplying the change in economic organization. At the same time, new innovations had been developed to complement the changes in energy. For example, James Hargreaves created the spinning jenny. This allowed for more production of textiles and cotton cloth. John Kay created the flying shuttle, allowing for one worker, not two, to complete the task of producing textiles. James Watt created the steam engine, leading up to the railroad. Eli Whitney created the cotton gin, allowing for cotton seeds to be separated out from cotton. Now consider the connections that these inventions made. The ability to mass-produce products like cotton led to factories. Factories attracted workers. Workers demanded housing. This led to the new need to develop cities, and there was a need to transport workers, goods, and resources. All these interconnections led to the development of urban areas, transportation, communication, and housing. Now, in the midst of all of these changes, an old economist living in Scotland, Adam Smith, wrote a book entitled The Wealth of Nations. He argued that all these actions we're talking about, the freeing up of markets, was like allowing an invisible hand to guide people to higher levels of prosperity. How so? So Smith's argument went like this. If people are free, they begin to compete. Why? Because all of us are driven by self-interest for ourselves and our families. So we start to form small companies, and these companies need to attract workers to make things. So owners start to compete by offering better working conditions and pay. This allows workers to produce, but then also to consume. And who will they choose to consume from? They will choose the companies that produce the best products. This creates a competition that's sort of like the following triangle effect. So the question is whether or not the Industrial Revolution really did produce the effects that Smith claimed. So the question is whether or not the Industrial Revolution really did produce the effects that Smith claimed. Sort of. Yes, it is true. People's absolute living standards went up. They moved from poor farming areas into wealthier cities. But they also faced the following conditions. Number one, men made the equivalent of $6 a week while working up to 17 hours per day. Women made $3 and children only made $1.50. That's per week. Number two, businesses were not required to keep safe environments during this time, nor did they have to pay out when workers got injured on the job. Remember, laissez-faire. Government needs to get out of the way. Number three, children worked as young as 8 years old, and usually in some of the most dangerous positions, especially coal mines. Which brings up number four. Miners usually died pretty young due to what's called black lung. That's when dust from coal gets stuck in your lungs. Number five. Workers lived in tenement housing, usually one-room apartments that would have to fit up to 8 to 12 people. And number six, even pulling together all of their income, families did not have enough money to invest in the future. So what are our takeaways? Number one, the Industrial Revolution was large. So what are our takeaways? Number one, the Industrial Revolution was largely led by changes in energy production and the control of the surrounding environment. Number two, the Industrial Revolution led to massive changes and innovations in communication, transportation, and production. Number three, the effects were kind of mixed. Some positive raises in standards of living, but also some relative problems when it came to poverty, child labor, and the lack of protections for workers. So from here on out, we're going to be asking, what has been the long-term effect of the Industrial Revolution on people, on the environment, and on the way we live? See you in class.